Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you, Jim.
The Okanagan-Similkameen Regional Council has made an important decision when it comes to smart meters. Maybe tell us about it.
Yes, I'm happy to. This past week, former Cabinet Minister Tom Sidden presented to the Council evidence with the help of Dr. Malcolm Patterson, who's a cancer researcher, evidence that the radio frequency radiation that's emitted by the smart meters is very dangerous, and also talked about the fact that the meters have not been certified safe, hence the fire issue. And the Council voted for a moratorium on the issue. They are asking Christy Clark and Bill Bennett to reconsider asking Fortis to implement these meters in the area. With hydro, we had gone through this process and had success in 60 communities, as well as the Union of BC Municipalities, all asking for a moratorium. But because the Clean Energy Act was passed, we were told by Rich Coleman, who was Energy Minister at the time, that if we didn't like the smart meters, we had two choices: go off the grid or leave the province. Hopefully, Fortis being a private company, there will be a little bit more pressure being able to put on them. And I think that there is evidence that the Fortis information that was given to the BC Utilities Commission was incomplete and erroneous in many instances. And I believe that they should be asking for the BC Utilities Commission to review Fortis's application. And the information that we know now, we know a lot more about the problems and about the design flaws and things that we didn't know about 2.5, 3 years ago. So this is very important to get the support from someone as significant as Tom Sidden, to put his name to something like this. I think it's very important.
You've heard that somebody believes that the Hydro's excuse for not telling us anything about it, they hide behind the Freedom of Information Act, saying it's private information and they can't release it. Well, maybe they might have to?
Well, I told you this. This has happened to me. I have submitted quite a few Freedom of Information requests. One was, I like to know how much money BC Hydro has paid to clients who have had damages to their homes, to fires, because the insurance companies are being very silent. And you and I both know that if an insurance company is going to be facing risk, it's going to be telling people about it. They're going to demand that something be done, or that premiums are going to be increased drastically. Since this hasn't happened, I can only surmise that it's because BC Hydro or Itron and Itron are paying off the claims. And I put in a Freedom of Information Act asking how much of our money has been spent paying for damages, and Hydro refused. They said it's personal information. I want to know what personal information. Whose personal information? I'm not asking for personal information. I'm asking for Hydro's information. I've put in several requests. I asked for locations of collectors, those transmitters that are outside our bedroom walls, maybe along the street, just outside our home, that have the potential of having 8 transmitters in them. I asked for the location. They denied it. They said it's a security issue. I've asked for information about fires, where the fire commissioner or the fire inspector said it was due to failed electrical distribution equipment. The only distribution equipment we have on our home is the smart meter. So I've asked for the information, what is the failed electrical equipment that's on our home that caused this fire? And they're refusing. They say it's personal information. They're hiding behind the Freedom of Information Act whenever a question is asked that they don't want to answer. And just today, a former government worker, it's in the news right now, said that he was ordered to delete emails under the Freedom of Information Act that pertain to the Highway of Tears. He said that he was ordered to delete more than a dozen emails, and when he refused to do it, his assistant was ordered to do it. This is against the law. The Freedom of Information Act is there so that the public has a right to know what the government is doing. And what Clark, what Bennett, apparently what the entire government is doing is breaking the law. They are refusing to give us this information. And when I've asked the Privacy Commissioner, I've submitted complaints about all of my requests that have been refused. And she's so backed up with work, her response is, I'll deal with this when I can, but it can be many months.
Well, in other words, she hasn't been given the resources to deal with all the complaints and requests she's receiving.
Yes, exactly. Just like the fire commissioner. Funding is very scarce, and money has been taken away from the fire commissioner, so he does not know what's happening. The fire departments don't have money enough to file their fire reports. Nobody has enough money to do the jobs that they're supposed to do. And I suspect the same thing is happening with the privacy commissioner. She does not have the staff to deal with these things. And so Hydro knows it. Hydro is sure. I'm sure that they know, and they're counting on the fact that they could say no to me and to you and to everybody else, and there's nothing we can do because the privacy commissioner doesn't have staff to help us.
We'll have more with Sharon Noble right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sharon Noble, director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. In Ontario, you say there's a concerted effort by the government to silence officials who might have concerns about smart meters.
Not only about smart meters, but the hydro program there entirely. Hydro 1 has been in a mess ever since the smart meter program came in. Bills have increased 3 and 4 times for people. Bills are going out that are incorrect. The meters are running fast, and they don't understand why they're being charged for consumption that they're not using. And Hydro is Hydro 1 in Ontario is basically acting the same way as BC Hydro. They're saying our smart meters can't make mistakes. We're right. And they're cutting off power for people or threatening to cut off power for people if they don't pay huge bills. Some people are getting bills for like $1,200 a month for a single house, a small house. And the Auditor General came out with a report about a month and a half or 2 months ago just damning Hydro 1 and the smart meter program, saying there are no benefits. The costs are outrageous, and they're ongoing, and there's no end to them. There are fire issues. There are privacy issues. And then another report came out from the ombudsperson this week saying that Hydro 1 is being run into the ground, that people are being treated rudely, that their concerns are real and they're not being taken seriously, and that there should be an entire overhaul of the entire Hydro 1 system. And the government is saying this is the last support that will be coming from these departments. Hydro 1 is going to be sold, at least 60% of it is, and we don't want any more negative information coming out from any of our departments.
Well, that's handy then. If you have a fire connected to a smart meter in Ontario, no one's going to know about it.
They don't know about it now. And just as we don't, they're not being reported. They're not being tracked. There are so many things that are happening, Jim, that nobody is being told about. I'm sure that the smart meter program and the fire issue is just the ones that I know about. I'm sure other things are happening. But the fact of the matter is, our lives depend upon the fires. These meters are putting our lives and the lives of our families at risk. The other things are important. Billing is important. Privacy is important. But we deserve to know, and we deserve to have these things removed from our homes when it's known that these are going to cause fires. In California this week, another 100 meters exploded off homes. This is happening with great regularity, and we don't know if it's happening here. Everything is so stifled, information is not getting to us the way it should, Jim.
At some point, could a person sue if they suffer damages and they weren't warned about possible dangers? Or is that part of your class action lawsuit?
It's part of the investigation we're trying to find out. I believe there is a new law, and I can't remember the name of it offhand, but it pertains to, it was passed by the lower courts about 2 or 3 weeks ago, saying that a government agency can be held liable for actions it takes when it knows, when it's been told that there is something wrong. Before, government agencies were more or less immune to prosecution. And this particular case, and I believe it was in Ontario, said that no, the government agencies and the government agents can be held liable for bad decisions that result in hurting people. And if this stands, yes, I think we could sue Hydro. I think we could sue Bill Bennett. I think we could sue Christy Clark. I think we could sue Terry Kendall, who knows that these are dangerous things and he's not doing anything. Yeah, I think these people might be liable.
Well, too, that court decision might be the Supreme Court of Canada ruling that gentleman held in jail for 27 years for rapes he did not commit had the right to sue the government for damages.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've had court rulings saying, yeah, if you make a major mistake and you know you've made a mistake, it's up to you to correct it. And if you don't, you have to pay damages.
This is why it's so very important that people write to their MLAs, write to Perry Kendall, to Bill Bennett, to Christy Clark, even though they are ignoring our letters, even though they are sending back form letters. We need to tell them that we know that these things are dangerous. We need to give them reports, we need to give them information, and we need to keep copies of it so that down the road they can't say they didn't know. All they can say is they didn't care.
Now, a lot of people will argue life without Wi-Fi would come to a grinding halt. We're so used to our wireless devices. But you said there are high-tech solutions that don't rely on using radio frequency to transmit information.
Absolutely. Europe, as many people know, is years ahead of us, always technically. When my husband and I moved over and spent a few years in Europe, we moved over in 97, and I wanted to have a VCR that played both types. There were two types of tapes that they'd play, VCR. And they weren't using VCR, they were using DVDs over there. I'd never at that point even heard of a DVD. Well, the same thing is happening. They know that wireless radiation is dangerous. They removed Wi-Fi from schools and put in fiber optic cable. And what they are doing now is they are carrying the fiber optic cable to LED outlets, to light outlets above desks or on desks, and light is being used to transmit the data. It's from the fiber optic cable down to your computer or down to your phone. It is safe, it has no radiation in it, and it is faster because it's being carried by fiber optic cable. And as anyone knows who's used fiber optic cable, it's faster, it's safer, it carries more data, and it can't be hacked as easily as wireless devices can, or wireless transmissions can. And there's no radiation. So yeah, this is what, in fact, there was an article yesterday that I read about being used in a grocery store for people as they're shopping. The lights are transmitting data down to their cell phones, letting them know what's on a special, what's going on in the store that they might want to know about, things like that. It's that common now.
And that's in France.
That's in France, but it's probably throughout Europe. France, when we lived in Ireland and we lived in France, and they were both miles ahead of North America, and when we came back about 5 years later, we had been using things there for 4 years that still weren't available here.
Wow. So we're working in the Stone Ages.
Well, the companies here go the cheap route. And as long as the government is allowing them to deal with unsafe devices and unsafe things. For instance, in Europe, when we were there was a big stink, and this was almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago, about GMO foods. They would not allow GMO foods to be sold. And I don't know what they're doing now, but I'll bet you that you can at least get labeling, and I bet you can find organic foods much more easily than you can here.
And of course, the food there has to be labeled if it has GMO in it.
I'm sorry?
And I said foods in Europe, if they're not outright banned, have to have a label saying that they contain GMO materials.
Yes, and we can't even get that. And as far as labels are concerned, we're trying to get labels on cell phones, telling people that these could be dangerous. Don't give them to your babies. And we can't get that.
The last time that we talked to you 2 weeks ago, you were talking about putting warning labels on the phones. Apparently some municipalities in California have already passed bylaws saying they have to do that.
Berkeley did.
Yeah.
A few months ago, San Francisco did. And the wireless industry came down hard on them and threatened to sue the city because they were breaching their freedom of speech. Even though all San Francisco wanted to do was to put on the phone or on the box the very same thing that was in the manual. But San Francisco backed down. Berkeley, California is not about to back down. And they have enlisted the help of a top-notch lawyer who's working pro bono on this. and they're going to see it through. They are demanding the right for people to be informed, and they are fighting for. They are going to be putting labels, not only on the boxes but on phones, and also they're going to be putting it on placards so that when you go into a store to buy a phone, it's there in front of you, so that you will know that these emit microwave radiation that has been determined to be a 2B carcinogen, and that it is especially harmful to children.
Do you have any idea when your class action suit will actually be before a judge?
Our class action or the
Yes.
one in Berkeley?
Your class action.
No. It was revised. I think I told you we revised it a couple of months ago to emphasize the charter rights, emphasizing the fact that we have the right to live in our home free of intrusion, free of being forced to put something on our home or to use in our home that we believe to be dangerous. And because of our changes, there was a slight delay, but more importantly, the judge needed 5 days because of all the evidence that BC Hydro needs. And the judge had initially set aside 5 days, the end of April, but something happened to her schedule, and she could no longer take it. She didn't have 5 days anymore. I don't know what happened. She never told us the details. So we had to revise the schedule, and we're now scheduled, I believe. I don't know for sure we have a date, but I think it's the end of November, beginning of December.
Sharon, is there a website people can go to learn more about this issue?
They certainly can, Jim. The first one is www.citizensforsafetechnology.org, and the second one is stopsmartmetersbc.com.
Sharon, thanks a lot for chatting with us.
My pleasure, Jim. Thank you.
My guest has been Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. It's very popular. Check it out. Comments about the show can be sent to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.